So when you're driving, you've got a rear backup camera. It's always on. You can turn it off if you'd like. I always leave it on. And then whenever you hit the turn signal to change lanes, so I'm going to hit the right turn signal, the camera switches and it shows me what's in the blind spot on the right hand side. If I switch and I hit the left side, it switches and shows me it's on the left hand side. So using that camera combined with the mirrors really helps you out when you're driving to make sure that there's no one in your blind spot when you're changing lanes. After a few seconds, let's switch back to the rear view camera. There's a tire pressure monitor right here. There's 6 tires, 2 sets of dual tires in the back and the front 2 tires. It's always cycling through, giving you tire temperature and tire pressure. The readings that are on here really take a little bit to become accurate. First, it takes a few minutes for the receiver to detect all the tires. And also, you're going to notice some lower tire pressure values here when you first started. And you don't want to be alarmed by those because you haven't been moving and given a chance for the tires to come up to temperature, and then of course for the pressure to increase. So these tires have a rated pressure of 110 psi. Right now you can see a lot of them are just below 100, but once you get on the road and get driving, these are going to come up to around 110 psi. This light will turn red if there's a low pressure or a temperature alarm. A couple times I've been driving and I've gotten a red light telling me that there was a temperature problem. Really what happened was the temperature went up to 250 degrees. I think that's just where it maxes out. So after a minute, that went away, it went back to normal. So don't be alarmed if you see a momentary temperature indication. You really want to rely on these for pressure. So if you're driving and you're on the highway and you see the pressure drop below 100 psi, you want to make note of that. Everything else is pretty typical. There's some fans though you can use to send warm air towards the back. There's actually 2 settings. There's a low and there's a high. There is a sunshade. There is the solid one that you see here, and then behind that solid one there's actually a there's a black mesh one. So that one I'll typically bring down about a foot when driving as a sunscreen because there's no other visors. But everything else on here is really rather typical. There's a mount here for your phone. There is a vehicle 12-volt supply. Down here there are some USB connections for a phone charger. The last thing I'll note when you're driving is RVs and motorhomes, they have something that's called rear end swing. So an RV, when you turn, you're actually pivoting on the back tires. And because there's so much length out back behind the tire, when you go to turn, the rear end is going to swing out. So you want to be very mindful of that when you're driving, but you really want to pay close attention to that when you're trying to make tight maneuvers. If you pull up next to a curb that has like a mailbox or a telephone pole alongside of it, and then you go to pull away from it and you cut the wheel, you're going to swing the rear end of the coach out and you're going to hit whatever's there along the curb. You definitely don't want to do that. The other time you want to be really mindful of that is when you're trying to get gas. So the gas tank on this motorhome is at the very back. That can be a little challenging. It's offset to the driver's side. So whenever you're getting gas, you're going to want to use your cameras, try and get as close to the pump as possible. But if you're just a foot or two away from the pump, in your car you might be able to, address that just by moving a little bit. You're not going to have that flexibility or that agility with the motorhome because of that rear end swing. So anytime that you're trying to maneuver in a real tight spot, just be sure and take your time, be patient, and plan out your moves so that you don't hit anything.